Alright, welcome back to boss number 7 of the Black Temple Guide. That is Mother Shahraz. That's this lady right here. Let's just jump into it. So this is Mother Shahraz. She is easily going to be one of the biggest hurdles of this entire tier and this entire phase. All of this comes down to the shadow resistance mechanic that she has. She has all these other abilities, and one of them matters a lot more than all the others. They all kind of matter, but one definitely a lot more. And yeah, it's just she's just a real pain in the butt. And all of that comes from shadow resistance. So let's talk about shadow resistance. This fight deals an incredible amount of shadow resistance. So, shadow resistance will be needed by every single person in the raid except for 3 tanks. Those 3 tanks, because of another mechanic, won't have to worry about the shadow resistance, but they will need to get as much defensive gear on themselves as possible, because they will be taking incredible amounts of physical damage. But other than that, all 22 other raiders need to have shadow resistance. Generally, the more shadow resistance you get, the better. Now, I know that there's a whole bunch of debate that's out there, and there's no right way to do it. And I'm sure, as I've heard it from other places, that the meta, quote-unquote, is going to change between needing more, needing less, how to do the fight effectively. But essentially, everyone can agree that if you have a good amount of shadow resistance, it makes the fight incredibly easier and makes it feel way more comfortable to do. So, that being said, let's talk about how the cap of shadow resistance. The cap is 295 unbuffed. That is because if you get plus 70 from a priest buff, you will be at the 365. 365 is the cap. Anything over that is useless. 365 is the number that you are looking for to be totally capped if that's what you are going for. However, 295 and being totally resistance capped is totally overboard for this fight. We do not need to be totally maxed. The only people who would consider, I would think, would consider being totally resistance capped would be maybe healers, but you are also paying for that resistance cap by hurting yourself in your plus healing stat. However, resistance does do a lot for tanks, or for healers, because there is a mana drain ability on this fight. Being able to resist that mana drain will make you have more mana throughout the fight. Really, do whatever you think is comfortable. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing healers having more, but definitely do not break your bank trying to get 295, because the shadow resistance stuff is going to be expensive. As I have written down here, 90% of this boss is beaten outside of the raid. The mechanics, yes, there's one mechanic that's a little finicky and difficult to deal with, but the rest of them we can all cheese, and there's nothing else that we really need to worry about. So other than that one mechanic, the rest of it is just getting everyone prepared and ready and in the gear they need to be to get to Mother Shahraz. Now, there is a shadow resistance set that everybody will get with Hearts of Darkness come this next phase. But these first couple of weeks, we are not going to have Hearts of Darkness. We are not going to spend all that time farming Hearts of Darkness, because we are a mid-core raiding guild. We're not trying to be the best of the best, and most guilds aren't that way. We are just trying to kill bosses when we can, but we don't have, the entire week to have people farm stuff. We can't be wasting time farming trash with the group that we have. So that's just not feasible for us. Determine what's best for your guild and go from there. But for us, it doesn't really matter. So, all of that being said, very long-winded, we will focus on getting the shadow resistance to the people that need it the most. I'm going to say we are going to want to give healers at first, then DPS without ways to cheese the mechanic, as we'll get into later, and then other DPS. Everyone's going to end up getting it, but at the beginning, no one's going to really have it, so you're going to have to know how to get to the shadow resistance number that we are looking for without having those crafted pieces of gear. Do not assume that you're going to get any piece of crafted gear. We have no idea what the drop rate is going to be like on Hearts of Darkness. If it is anything like what we see on the PTR, it is pretty low. So we are not going to be expecting a whole lot of them. And it's better safe than sorry. So start getting shadow resistance now. All of that being said, finally, all of this is coming down to what we are going to try to shoot for and what we've been telling people to do, and hopefully you've already begun doing, but if you haven't, start doing it now. We want all of our raiders to be somewhere between 200 to 230 shadow resistance unbuffed. If you get to this number, you will be at around 300 to just under 300 shadow resistance when buffed, which means more often than not, you're going to be resisting 75% of the damage that comes out. I've seen all the other numbers talking about the resistance damage caps and the ups and downs, the waves of how shadow resistance works. We're going to forget all that. Just pick 200 to 230. You can get lost in the weeds. Ultimately, it's not a hard fight. If you get the shadow resistance you need, the boss is going to die. This is the way to do it. This is what we're going to shoot for. This is what we're going to do. We think it's going to be a comfy place to be to do the mechanics and not die. But also not go totally overboard that we are wasting all of our money at the auction house trying to buy this shadow resistance stuff that hopefully we're going to replace anyway when we do finally get the Hearts of Darkness that we're looking for. One thing to note, if you are a class or you have a profession that helps you get away from the mechanic, which is Fatal Attraction that we are talking about, you can definitely go lower. So if you are a mage with Blink, if you are a rogue with Cloak, which I've heard may not work, so don't bank on that, rogues, but it might work. But on the PTR, apparently some rogues were trying it and it was not working, but it worked in the past, so no one's quite sure what's going to come out on live. But if you're an engineer and you have rocket boots, that's a great way to reduce your shadow resistance that you need. Any type of movement increases will help a lot. So your dashes, your sprints. But yeah, all that you can take into account to try to go on the lower side. But just play it safe and everyone be at a minimum of 200 shadow resistance unbuffed, and we'll be able to kill the boss. Alright, so moving on to the actual boss and her mechanics and how we are going to position and all of that jazz. What we're going to do is we are going to do this other strategy where we will pull the boss. This is where the boss is at. We will pull her all the way back here. And there is a line on the ground here you'll be able to see. We will have the tank standing on that line, and they will be pushing Mother away from that line to try to get her back up here. So as you can see here, there's going to be the melee group is going to be on triangle, which is inside of this little couch bench looking thing. This boss has a mechanic where she will knock you up and into the air, and you will fall down and take a bunch of falling damage. It's a lot of unnecessary healing that we do not want to deal with. So, in order to avoid it, all of the melee are going to stick their bodies into this corner right here. And if you press the space bar and you are in the right spot, you will not be jumping. If you are not jumping, you are in the correct spot. That means that you will not be hit up when you do, or when this mechanic hits you. So all the melee, wedge yourself into this bench. The boss will be tanked, and hopefully her body is just around here, so all of the melee can hit her without having to move from this spot. The tanks will be right here. Tanks, be really careful on how you move her because she has a frontal conal cleave that needs to be soaked by 3 different tanks all at the same time. So the tank who has aggro, very slowly inch your way into her hitbox, and once you get close enough that she feels uncomfortable, I guess is the best way to put it, she will take a few steps back, but without turning her body. So you need to do it slow enough to the point that the animation or the tracking of the mob will make them take a few steps back. You can kind of push her that way without turning her, and push her slowly back into the melee so they can attack. All of the rest of the ranged and healers will be stacking underneath this fish, much the exact same way the healer or the melee are doing it here. Ranged will be stacking underneath the fish, and press the spacebar. If you're not jumping, you're in the right spot. One thing to note, if you are a character model that cannot fit under this fish, like I believe orcs and probably Janai cannot fit underneath it, or Taran, you can be standing where this person is standing right here, and there is a statue with a hand sticking out. If you just put your camera looking straight down on your character, you'll be able to see the hand. Put yourself immediately or just directly below it. When you get knocked up, you'll hit the hand and fall back down. You'll still take some falling damage, but won't be nearly as much as you would have taken. Yeah, so that's how we're going to be positioning the boss. All 3 tanks will be stacking up as tight as possible onto the main tank to soak the cleave. And finally, when we do this pull, we will have a hunter MD pull and run back here. Healers should be pre-spamming the tanks to get them the inspiration and whatever armor buffs you can get on them, because this tank is going to get absolutely crushed by a melee and a saber slash back to back. It's going to happen, and it can almost one-shot. So that's something to worry about. If it keeps happening, we can just have the tanks pick them up and slowly work their way back. Okay? But that is something to worry about. Just bubble the tanks and we should probably be fine. Alright? Moving on to mechanics of the actual fight. She does that saber lash that I mentioned about the tanks need to sit right on top of each other. So the saber lash does a crazy amount of damage, but it gets split between all targets hit. So the way to do it is we have all 3 tanks stacking up on top of each other. It's the only 3 people who don't have Shadow Res in this fight. They all have max defense. They are as defensive as they can be, and they just get hit and trucked as hard as possible with this saber lash, and they just need to get healed up. The main tank especially, because he's also going to be taking melees, so healers gotta heal through it. This is a very heal intensive fight, and really it just comes down to can we get into position, and after that, can the healers heal fast enough? That's really all it is. This entire fight is just healing. Aside from that, the boss does an AoE silence in an 18-yard range. If we have them stacked up correctly, the boss should not be hitting people with that, so we shouldn't worry about that. And then every 30 seconds, a random beam will come out that will jump to random players and hurt them or drain mana. This is why more shadow resistance helps on healers, because it's very heal intensive fight. They're going to be using all of their mana, they're also going to be getting mana drained. So if you can resist those mana drains, it really helps keep your mana up. Definitely ride those potion cooldowns and whatever else you can to keep your mana up. Aside from this, one of the beams I think also silences. They'll do a bunch of random stuff. We're just going to stack and heal through it, and it'll be fine. Alright? Aside from that, this is the mechanic I've been talking about, and the whole reason we need shadow resistance. All the other stuff that does shadow resistance is minimal to what this is. So, this is easily the most important mechanic of the fight. It's called Fatal Attraction. And what she will do is she will teleport 3 characters to a random location and connect them with a beam that does ticking splash damage. Each player must move 25 yards away from each other player to break the chains. So it will keep doing ticking damage until you are 25 yards away from that, from each other. So the way to deal with it is all 3 members get teleported to their random location, and then immediately all 3 members need to start running in opposite directions to break the chains as fast as possible. Do not run through the raid if you have the beam, because you will do ticking splash damage on the entire raid. And also avoid the front of the boss on your way back, because you don't want to get hit by that cleave. Use any speed increases or defensive abilities you have to survive. It's mainly just about doing this correctly to survive. Other than that, let the healers do their job. It is possible that people get teleported right on top of the raid here, and it does ticking splash damage on everyone all the time. And if that happens, whatever. We're gonna wipe. It's just the thing that's gonna happen. It doesn't matter where you tank the boss at any point in the room. If that happens, like, you can get teleported on, and that's just gonna happen, and you can die. It's whatever. It's annoying, but it happens. Also, another small thing to note, right around here, at least on the PTR, if you pulled the boss past this plane back here, she would reset. So if a tank dies, like I said, on pull to the Saber Lash and melee combo, you can just run out and reset her and not have to worry about a full wipe reset and save a little bit of time. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, this is what the Fatal Attraction looks like. These are the beams connecting. These 2 people are about to break them. This person's going to be there. If you find yourself running in the same direction as another person, one of you needs to stop. So be ready to be that person to stop and move the other way. If you're both running in the same direction, that is the worst possible thing you can do. Literally standing still and doing nothing is better than moving in the same direction as another person, because as you move in the same direction, you both will be splashing onto each other. So you'll both be taking double the damage. So just look out. There's no good way to do it. Just pay attention. Be quick. If you get teleported, move as quick as possible. Pop whatever defenses you have. Stay alive. And the boss will die. It shouldn't be a crazy amount. There is a rage mechanic, or an enrage mechanic on the fight, but it is so long that we're never going to hit it. So, yeah, that is it. And if you do everything correctly, Mother will die. So, I will see you all in the next video.